Score more with the college-branded Venmo debit card and earn up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash. Got paid back? With the Venmo debit card, you can instantly access your balance and spend on what you want, like game day snacks, gear, tickets, and more. The more you do, the more cash back you can earn. Plus, there's no monthly fee or minimum balance. Sign up now at Venmo.com/collegecard. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. Select schools available. Venmo Stash terms and exclusions apply at venmo.me/stash terms. Max $100 cash back per month.
So good, so good, so good.
New spring arrivals are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Get ready to save big with up to 60% off Rag & Bone, Marc Jacobs, Free People, and more.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
Because there's always something new.
Join the Nordy Club to unlock exclusive discounts, shop new arrivals first, and more. Plus, buy online and pick up at your favorite Rack store for free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan, Capitol Bureau Chief and host of Under the Dome. You're listening to our latest episode for the week of November 25th, 2024. It's Thanksgiving week, everybody. If you're working today, hopefully you're off at least Thursday. Early shout out to everyone that has to work on holidays. I'm joined by my News and Observer colleagues, Kyle Ingram and Avi Bajpai from our politics team, and Adam Wagner, who's politics adjacent with environment and climate change, and especially this week, because the bulk of our conversation will be about a bill about dentistry. Psych, it was originally about dentistry, and then it was totally gutted and replaced with a conference report that had a little bit to do with Helene relief, and Adam will explain what it does and doesn't have. There's other drama involved with disaster relief, but the crux of the bill was there are a lot of changes in government and power and the balance of power and how much Republicans have power, more power if this becomes law, than recently elected Democrats. I'm going to start with you, Kyle, on once we read this. Originally it was 132 pages when it was the draft, and the final version 131 when it was public. The biggest thing you saw in this bill, I'm guessing it wasn't more Helene relief.
No, the biggest thing we saw is the changes to the election board. North Carolina State Board of Elections is currently structured to where the governor gets to appoint a majority of the members. And since North Carolina has had a Democratic governor since 2017, Democrats have controlled that board. But Republicans have been unhappy with this setup for a very long time and have been trying to shift it for a very long time unsuccessfully. We saw in this bill their newest attempt to change that control. And what they did was say that now the State Board of Elections is going to be appointed entirely by the state auditor, which is a statewide executive position that's never been in charge of elections here. But a Republican recently won that seat after it was held by a Democrat for around 16 years. So under this new scheme, a Republican would be able to appoint a majority of those members to the board, which is responsible for certifying elections, creating early voting plans, overseeing campaign finance, a lot of really important stuff.
So to quote Senate Leader Phil Berger, who on the Senate floor on Wednesday, talking to reporters after the vote, was saying that they wanted more of a balance. I believe he said, Democrats said, no, 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 hell no. And so they decided to make this happen. The other aspect of this bill, and by the way, if people aren't, into like the nitty gritty of the legislative calendar and why they were even meeting, this was a scheduled session that they decided several months ago that they wanted to come back for, time to it being after the election. So clearly, when whatever they were going to do would be dependent on the results of the election and the power dynamic. Of course, these sort of placeholder weeks where they had like maybe a couple days session here and there ended up being big Helene relief bill sessions these past couple times. This is the third round of that. So they were scheduled to be in session Tuesday through Friday. It ended up only being Tuesday and Wednesday, plus a contentious meeting on Monday where they grilled the head of Rebuild NC and Hogshead. I want to say that if I have her name right, Adam?
Hogshead, yes.
Right. And by the time on Wednesday evening, when Democratic Governor Roy Cooper was in D.C. asking the feds for more money, she had lost her job. So, Adam, just following like how that, if we can pause for like a little bit of the Helene here, that's running, concurrently, to use a legislative term, with all of this, power shifts, taking power in the bill, was also Republicans not being happy about how NCORR was being run, and started with this GovOps grilling. And this is just kind of the latest and their kind of general unhappiness about how things are being run.
Yeah, so this has been a several-year-long saga now, and there are still 1,400 families from Hurricanes Matthew and Florence 2016 and 2018 that aren't home yet. And so there's just been a lot of question about the pace of how quickly those homes are getting built. And then in October, the NC Office of Resilience and Recovery told the General Assembly they need at least $175 million more dollars. That ask kind of fell into the laps of lawmakers who were understandably not pleased about it. It looks like that number might actually be more like $220 million, we learned Monday at the hearing. So this Senate Bill 382 that we discussed gave them 50. We'll see how far that goes to community ask. But obviously the concern is we need to wrap up the hurricane and Matthew, so the intention to turn towards Helene. Those are three really big recoveries. Helene is bigger than Matthew and Florence put together. So, we need to move into that.
Reporters had asked both Senate Leader Berger and then House Rules Chair Dustin Hall, who ended up giggling with reporters on Tuesday instead of Speaker Moore, because he dashed off to D.C. for his orientation. Is now he's the green person now. He's going to be a freshman in Congress. So both Hall and Berger, when they are asked about, you're unhappy with this, but you're giving them money anyway, they weren't happy about giving the agency money, but they also want people to get in their houses, and that, you still have to give the money to make sure it was going to happen.
Yeah, and that's a really tricky tightrope for them to walk here, obviously, right? I mean, it's going to cost what it's going to cost, but they're not happy with the fiscal management of the program. I think it's not unfair to say that management is why Laura Hogshead is out of a job right now.
And we should point out at that hearing on Monday, Republicans called on her to resign, I think.
Brendan Jones.
Yeah. And I think they've made similar calls in the past too, I think in 2022 as well. So they've been looking for some accountability with her for a while.
It's interesting where you say like the for a while. So when I talked at the top of the show about this was a dentistry bill that was, put out as a conference report. The only committee it was ever going to go through was House Rules. They ended up tossing that out. So it was a secretive process. I asked both Hall and Berger who wrote the actual bill. Was it Berger and Moore? And these are things they've been mad about since maybe budget time. Was it after the election, depending on who ran and won? And Berger, his response to me with who actually wrote it was, and I quote, staff. So you can take what you want from that snarky answer, which is technically correct, but neither he or Hall said who actually it was. And Berger pointed out they've been mad for a while about the Board of Elections. They've also been mad, Berger said, about the Attorney General. So Avi, what's the big change that's in here about Attorney General powers? Are there even any powers left if this becomes law?
Yeah, there are powers left, but really, there's a big slash to the AG powers made here. There have been conflicts between the Republican-led General Assembly and Attorney General Josh Stein, just speaking of recent memory, the last several years when he's been in office, where state laws that have been passed by the legislature go to court, are challenged in court, and you sort of have this situation where you have two different positions being taken on those laws. A different position by Attorney General Josh Stein and a different position taken by the legislative leaders in the General Assembly. Most notably, this happened with a lawsuit that was brought by Planned Parenthood against the 12-week abortion ban that was passed in 2023. So these changes, there's several changes, of course, to the governor's powers, AG powers, state superintendent of public instruction, there's a lot of stuff going on here, but the main thing is this bill says if a state law is being challenged in court, the if this bill is enacted, the Attorney General will not be able to take a different position, an independent or different position than the one that the legislative leaders and their counsel, their lawyers, are taking.
Basically, they want the AG to do what they want the AG to do in the laws that are passed. And, ask specifically, like, did you do this because Dave Bullock, the Republican one, is opposed for auditor, or Elaine Marshall, one reelection Secretary of State, so why they didn't, she's a Democrat, move it over there. And then Berger's answer about the AG was that, them not being happy with Stein. Of course, they're going to be dealing a lot more with him pretty soon. And because Democrat Jeff Jackson won, that this would just be more of the same. So they want to cut that off. We're going to take a break in a sec. Before we do, just after the break, we're going to talk about how Dustin Hall got a little more spotlight and the leadership. He was elected by the House Republican caucus to be Speaker next year. We knew that, but now we know it more so. But there's a little more going on there. We'll talk about that after the break.
It's crunch time at work, and you need to bring wings to your workday. Visit redbull.com/gettingitdone and answer a couple questions about your work style to get a Spotify customized playlist tuned to your productivity. Plus, score a can of Red Bull on us while you go from to-do to done. And remember, Red Bull gives you wings. Supplies are limited. Terms apply. Visit the website for more information.
Springfest means more sun, more fun, and more free at Lowe's. Keep your yard in line with an additional free Ego 56-volt battery when you buy a select Ego mower, trimmer, or blower. Plus, keep landscaping fresh with Stay Green 1 cubic foot garden soil, 5 bags for $10. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid through 4/8 while supplies last. Selection varies by location. Soil offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii.
You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm Dawn Vaughan, here with Avi Bajpai, Adam Wagner, and Kyle Ingram. As we were headed to the break, we were talking about Dustin Hall, who's the current rules chair, but he is now the speaker designate, a word that I did not know as a title until now in my years of covering government. And it basically means that your caucus elected you, the caucus that's going to be in this case, the House Republican lawmakers in January. But you're not technically the speaker yet. They have to do another one, another formality. So anyway, Dustin Hall, we've known it's been coming for a while because Speaker Moore basically gave his blessing to Rules Chair Hall to be the next speaker. And Moore still has a lot of power. Hall also has a lot of power now, and that's just how it's going to be. One thing that struck me about their announcement press conference, which ended up being late because there are some, from my understanding, back and forth with the down ballot election. So anyway, it's Hall. The majority leader is Brendan Jones, who we mentioned had called for Hogshead to resign. She did. So 11 men walk into the room. Everybody's white, which is what the caucus is anyway. Since Frontenac, I believe, lost his election. And the only woman is Representative Heather Ryan, who, if you haven't heard of her, she is a freshman, but she's already in office because she was appointed to finish the term of outgoing or already gone Representative Jason Sain, who resigned and I believe is a lobbyist now. Hall just turned 37, so he's youngish, middle-aged compared to Moore, I guess, is in his 50s, and he is an attorney. He was born and raised in Caldwell County, went to the West Caldwell High School in App State, got his law degree from Wake Forest, and he's been rules chair since 2020. John Bell, who he will be the rules chair. He had been majority leader. So there was a little shakeup there. And also Speaker Pro Tem is Mitchell Setzer, which is a big difference from Sarah Stevens, who had been in power for a while. And you can read our coverage for the full list of everybody. There is a co-conference chairs, which you can figure out maybe that's why everything took so long, and that is Representative Matthew Winslow and Representative Jeff Zanger. And then in the Senate, not a lot of surprises there. Berger is still Berger. Interestingly, elected whip, though, is Amy Gailey, Republican from Alamance, and she has not been whip before. So there's a woman in higher leadership in the Senate Republicans right now than the House. So to go back to the bill and some changes there and tied to the actual election results, I'm turning it back to you, Kyle, because of the Supreme Court race and changes in this bill. If it becomes law, it's gone to Cooper's desk. We're recording this Thursday afternoon. He could let it become law in 10 days. He could veto it. He could sign it. But there's nothing as of when we're recording this. But there's some more detailed stuff in there about elections, Kyle.
Well, so the race for North Carolina Supreme Court this year has been pretty protracted because it's been very, very, very close. Democrat Allison Riggs was running to keep her seat on the court against Republican Jefferson Griffin, who's currently a judge on the Court of Appeals. When election night was finished, Griffin, the Republican, was ahead by about 10,000 votes. But in North Carolina, we have a post-election canvass period where provisional and outstanding absentee ballots are counted. That usually takes about 10 days. And throughout that period, Riggs slowly started to gain a lead and eventually flipped the race to the point where now, with all outstanding ballots counted, Riggs is leading by 625 votes. Griffin's requested a recount, though, which will take about a week to go through, and he's also challenged 60,000 ballots in that race, saying that they could be potentially invalid. So this could stretch out for a while, go through some court hearing, goes through some quasi-judicial hearings. But Republicans have been very unhappy with how that race played out. They didn't like that we didn't know a winner sooner. They didn't like that it flipped. And so as part of the changes that they put forth in this massive omnibus bill we've been talking about, they want to shorten the time for county boards of elections to actually count these ballots. And there were around 60,000 provisional ballots this time. It took a long time for these workers to get through them. And a provisional ballot takes more work than counting as a regular one. You have to research, you might have to contact the voter. The state wants to change it to only give the counties 3 days to get through those, and usually it's about 9. And there's no extra funds allocated in the bill for more staff to make this happen. Now, Berger said that they may look at that in the next budget process, but there's no guarantee on that yet. So there could be big changes coming in how fast election workers have to get things done in future elections.
He definitely wants them to pick up the pace, especially if depending on how the results were. Adam, one more question for you before we get to our picks for headliner of the week. Representative Donnie Lameth, a Republican and the House member introducing the bill, kind of started off, and it's sort of all the Western North Carolina Republicans weren't really happy with this bill, and some didn't vote for it because it has Helene in the name, and there's maybe some Helene money, but not much. And this could have been the big bill. So what actually is in it and what's not? I mean, they keep saying they're going to wait on the feds, but even so.
Yeah, this is not the big disaster relief bill. This was $227 million shifted over from the rainy day fund to the Helene fund. That money's not been allocated, though. So it's going to be part of the storm relief, but we don't know for what yet. Then there were some other smaller allocations, $100 million in loans to governments, $25 million for debris removal. But what we're really seeing is kind of two different schools of thought about how the rainy day fund should be used. Democrats are saying it should be used now. There should be grants to businesses. There should be rent relief. There should be efforts to keep people in their homes, keep businesses open. Republicans are saying, yes, that's important, but we really need this rainy day fund to be available to us because the feds are going to come at some point and say, you need matching money for different federal programs, and that money has to be available.
And they're draining it.
And they spent $1.1 billion of the $4.8-ish billion that was in there when we started. Yeah. So the other thing is, returning to the firing of Laura Hogshead, Senator Tom Tillis has said a couple of times publicly now that the management of the Matthew and Florence money could make it harder to get Helene money. So I think it's fair to interpret that the governor and some Western North Carolina people have been in D.C. this week. This happened Wednesday night. He had more meetings Thursday. I think it's fair to link that maybe to a potential federal funding package.
For sure. And in the debate in the Senate, Senator Ralph Heiss, who's from Spruce Pine, so his own district has been impacted by Helene. He's also one of the top budget writers in the Senate. He said that the rainy day fund, which is the Savings Reserve Fund, its actual name, should be $10 billion. And I asked Berger about that, and he's like, yep, like that's about what. So you've got to think about going into the long session this budget year. They have to give more money to Helene, and they need to throw a boatload of money, no pun intended, into that savings reserve for the future.
Yeah, that was a really striking number.
Yeah.
And that was we've seen Matthew, we've seen Florence, we've seen Helene, we've seen these big storms. That seemed to be an acknowledgement from Republican leadership that these bigger storms are a financial reality for North Carolina.
Right. At the same time that with the ICE and voucher override, that $500 million are going to private school vouchers for people with higher incomes. It was just lower incomes. And Berger said that's money they already said they were going to spend, so they basically had to follow through on that. But there's a lot more money needed in a lot more places now, so we'll see how the next budget year turns. All right, I'm going to segue over to our picks for Headliner of the Week. One of our 4 headliners is actually about politics. So, Avi, I'm going to start with you. What's your headliner?
I'm gonna go with the fact that after more than a year of having supermajorities in both chambers, 72 members that were needed in the House, and overriding more than 24 vetoes, it looks like when lawmakers come back in January, the House Republicans are going to have 71 members, which brings us back to the situation where we were at the beginning of the 2023 long session, which was, are we going to see some swing voting Democrats who have records of voting with Republicans on certain key bills? Are we going to see that come back and be a factor? I'm anticipating that, preparing for that. So we're gonna keep an eye on some of those Democrats, a handful of them.
I'm going to watch
The phrase working supermajority.
Oh, yeah. They Moore trotted that out last time, and Hall brought it this time. I'm going to be looking, they won't be swing voters since Republicans have control, but I'm going to be looking at the moderate Republicans who, they are pretty controlled on what we get to see and what comes out of, or what stays in caucus versus comes out. But I think it's going to come out a little bit as far as what these, the control that the moderate Republicans have as far as spending, Helene, and anything else they want to do. All right, Adam, I'm going to go to you for a headliner. We're almost out of time. What's your headliner?
So mine is actually going to be a restaurant in Wilmington called Fork and Cork that they would normally be closed on Thanksgiving. Their owners have kind of thought about sitting at home with a smaller family and decided that's not going to be it. They're going to be open on Thanksgiving for everyone in downtown Wilmington.
Okay.
So,
Kyle, what's your headliner?
Mine is going to be pineapple casserole, which is a Southern dish that I've never had before today. As we record this, we had our N&O Friendsgiving, and one of our editors made, Jess Gilio, made pineapple casserole, which is a dish with cheese and pineapple and bread and butter and a bunch of good stuff. So
I totally missed it. If there's any left once we leave the podcast studio, I'll try it out, I think, with your recommendation. Mine is also Thanksgiving related. It's Thanksgiving break and school break to all the kids that are out of school starting after school on Tuesday and the people that work in the school. So I hope you enjoy your well-deserved break. With that, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks. I'm Dawn Vaughan for Avi Bajpai, Adam Wagner, Laura Brache, Kyle Ingram. We'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome and NC Insider, and sign up for our weekly political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.